So last summer on Tongal, I took a look at the summer of 1982 and called it the best summer of movies ever. This year, I'm going to take a look back at the 30th anniversary of another pretty great summer season, the summer of 1993. And much like 1982, Steven Spielberg once again dominated the box office. But instead of a friendly little alien, we got a bunch of not-so-friendly dinosaurs.
Hold on to your butts.
In 1993, I was 17, the summer before my senior year of high school. I didn't have the internet yet and was living in a small town, so I didn't have much movie information coming at me. But I was an avid reader of Entertainment Weekly, and their summer movie preview had set me up pretty well for what to expect. I saw many of these films in my local movie theater, and many more of them became staples that I'd watch over and over again on VHS or HBO. The year started off pretty good. Summersby was a big Richard Gere and Jodie Foster hit. The all-time classic Bill Murray comedy Groundhog Day was released.
Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again?
The Crying Game was blowing people's minds. A personal favorite of mine, Army of Darkness, bombed, but it has lived on in infamy.
See this? This is my boomstick!
The thriller Indecent Proposal burned up the box office with its sexual tension.
Suppose I were to offer you $1 million for one night with your wife.
The insanely quotable coming-of-age baseball film, The Sandlot, became an instant treasure in my life.
Hurry up, batter. It's gonna be a short game and I gotta get home for lunch.
But I'll start the summer movie season on May 7th with the political comedy Dave, starring Kevin Kline. Directed by Ivan Reitman, this film has a great concept for a comedy, with a presidential impersonator through a medical mishap actually becoming the president. It had a good run at the box office and still holds up well today.
You don't really know how much you can do until you stand up and decide to try.
That weekend also had the decent action drama Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, and Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing, back when he seemed to make at least one Shakespeare film a year. And although technically a 1988 film, I have to mention My Neighbor Totoro, which got its first American theatrical release. I probably didn't see or even hear of the film for another 5 years, but it's an all-timer, one of the best animated films ever. May 14th was a quiet weekend with the forgotten Richard Dreyfuss comedy Lost in Yonkers, and the also largely unseen Western Posse. I'm sure each film has their fans, but they didn't do well at the box office, and I honestly don't think I've ever seen either one of these films to this day. May 21st had two underwhelming movies that nevertheless became hits, Hot Shots Part 2 and Sliver. Now back in 1993, I thought Part 2 and the original Hot Shots were hilarious, and I'll still quote them from time to time.
Now I will kill you until you die from it.
But there are certainly better spoof films from this era, and even this year. Sliver was a big deal because it was only 1 year after the monster hit Basic Instinct, and this film reunited Sharon Stone with Basic Instinct writer Joe Esterhaus, who was the master of 90s sexual thrillers. I think people were hoping for the magic of Basic Instinct again, with most coming back disappointed. I watched it on VHS in 1994, but honestly can't remember a thing about it.
You like to watch? Watch this.
Now, May 28th, I was there day one to see Sylvester Stallone's Cliffhanger. That movie kicked ass that day and still does today. I believe it's Stallone's best film outside the Rocky or Rambo series. Rennie Harlan directs the hell out of this Die Hard on a Mountain film. Others might remember this is the day that the live-action Super Mario Bros. Came out. At the time, the movie was pretty laughable, but it's gone on to grow a cult following.
See you later, alligator.
June 4th was a super quiet weekend. I think Hollywood was clearing out for what they knew was coming next. We got a forgotten Michael J. Fox comedy, Life with Mikey, and the Don Johnson, Rebecca De Mornay thriller, Guilty as Sin. I don't think I've ever heard anyone mention either of these films in my entire life, probably because they were both about to be dino food for Jurassic Park on June 11th. I couldn't have been anticipating a movie more than this one. I'd read the Michael Crichton book the summer before, and at the time it was the greatest thing I'd ever read. With my then and still favorite director Steven Spielberg making it. What could possibly be better? The first time I saw it, it just washed over me like a tidal wave. I think I was so stunned by what I was seeing, I couldn't even take it all in. But I saw it 3 or 4 times more that summer and countless times since.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
You'd think the next weekend would be a huge letdown, but there was actually another, what was supposed to be a huge blockbuster. Going into that summer, it was all about Jurassic Park and Last Action Hero. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the biggest movie star in the world at the time, and it was his first movie post-Terminator 2. I was absolutely stoked to see it, and even went to Burger King to get my own action cup.
So see the movie and collect all 4 cups.
I personally enjoyed the film in 1993, but it was panned by critics and audiences alike. I think it was pretty far ahead of its time, being meta long before that word became commonplace. But over the years, fans have caught up to what the film was trying to do, and have come to embrace it as a fun 90s action flick.
To be or not to be? Not to be.
The weekend after that, on June 25th, there were 2 fairly big hits. The comic strip kids film Dennis the Menace, which I think is largely forgotten today. But it was also the weekend of one of the greatest romantic comedies of all time, Sleepless in Seattle. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan magically have incredible romantic chemistry despite almost never being on screen together. I didn't see it that summer. At 17, it wasn't a film for me. But I've seen it 20 plus times since, and it's my second favorite romantic comedy after When Harry Met Sally.
That's a chick's movie.
I would say so.
On June 30th, we got Tom Cruise's The Firm. Based on a John Grisham novel, this legal thriller is tightly constructed and stands as one of the high watermarks of the genre, which is really saying something because they were releasing 10 plus a year in the 90s. If it wasn't for Cruise's other legal thriller, A Few Good Men, it might be the best one of the decade.
I don't need much of a life, Mr. Voiles, but it has to be mine.
July 2nd had Son-in-Law, for which most folks is a long-forgotten, moronic Pauly Shore comedy. And it is a complete relic of its time, but that's part of its charm. I contend this movie is damn funny. It was a VHS staple in my house, and it still makes me laugh to this day.
Listen, you guys, I'm sorry for interrupting your meal, but there's something that everybody needs to know before I go. Can't you take a hint, you idiot?
July 7th, we got the Rookie of the Year, an okay baseball comedy about a kid who through a medical miracle becomes a major league pitcher. But for me, The Sandlot is the baseball movie that will live on from this year. July 9th was the well-made Clint Eastwood action thriller In the Line of Fire, which is one of the biggest hits of his career, unbelievably outgrossing Unforgiven. I don't know if people still talk about this film, but it was good at the time, and Weekend at Bernie's 2 bombed, quickly killing off that quote-unquote franchise. July 16th hit it big with Free Willy, a film that never did anything for me, but 90s kids ate it up that summer, and on VHS, spawning 2 more 90s sequels. I much preferred Hocus Pocus, which was a middling success, but has gone on to have a much longer legacy. It's a film I've watched with my kids every Halloween for the past decade plus.
Oh, look. Another glorious morning. Makes me sick.
July 22nd was the critically acclaimed drama The Piano. Jane Campion's film went on to be nominated for Best Picture, with Holly Hunter and Anna Paquin winning Best Actress and Supporting Actress. It's a beautifully made film with an incredibly dark plot. Campion, of course, has gone on to a long and distinguished career, and is still making powerful films today. July 23rd had a couple of mostly unremarkable comedies. The sequel nobody was asking for, Another Stakeout, and the SNL skit brought to life, Coneheads.
When the hydrogen droplets have ceased, we will go forth and live undetected on Earth amongst the blunt skulls.
On July 28th, we got one of Mel Brooks' lesser satires, Robin Hood, Men in Tights. It can't hold a candle to Brooks' best films, but it's certainly a better spoof film than Hot Shots 2, with a winning lead performance by Carrie Elways.
Unlike some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent.
2 days later, we had Rising Sun, the second Michael Crichton adaptation of the summer, starring Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes. This action thriller was a pretty big hit at the time, but it doesn't really hold up. We also got the post-Wayne's World, pre-Austin Powers, Mike Myers' dark romantic comedy, So I Married an Axe Murderer. This was another VHS classic for me. Mike Myers, playing his own dad, is one of the funniest characters of the 90s.
William, move your head. Look at the size of that boy's head. Shh. I'm not kidding, it's like an orange on a toothpick.
Shh, you gotta give the boy a complex.
Well, that's a huge noggin. It's a virtual planetoid. Has its own weather system. Heed, move!
On August 6th, we got our last monster hit of the summer with The Fugitive. Harrison Ford on the run from Tommy Lee Jones in this damn near note-perfect action thriller. Ford had become one of the biggest movie stars in the world in the last decade. He'd played Han Solo, Indiana Jones, Deckard, and Jack Ryan, leading up to the role of playing Dr. Richard Kimball. It's a list of films I'd put up against almost any other movie star in history.
I want out of each and every one of you is a hard target search of every gas station, residence, warehouse, farmhouse, hen house, outhouse, or doghouse in that area. Checkpoints go up at 15 miles. Your fugitive's name is Dr. Richard Kimball.
And another shout out to a small film that left a pretty big impression on my life at the time. My Boyfriend's Back is a romantic comedy about a teenager who dies and comes back as a zombie to take the girl of his dreams to prom. The film was probably too dark for its intended audience and bombed, but it's a pretty fun comedic spin on the zombie genre.
You wouldn't believe the trouble I had getting here.
I would believe it, and I'm not impressed.
August 11th, there was the excellent Searching for Bobby Fischer, a well-made, well-acted drama about a young chess prodigy, and what a toll it takes on him and his family. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. August 13th featured the craziest of all the Friday the 13th sequels, Jason Goes to Hell. It's seriously bonkers, even by horror sequel standards. It was also the same day that the beautifully made kids movie The Secret Garden was released, which is one of those rare magical kids movies that work no matter what age you watch it at. I can almost guarantee you'll be in tears at the end.
Don't dare say a word about it to anyone.
On August 20th, John Woo made his American film debut with the fun Van Damme flick Hard Target. It's a sweet mix of over-the-top action scenes and hilarious unintentional comedy, with Lance Henriksen as a chewing-the-scenery bad guy. This is worth a look if you like your cheese well toasted.
You know why you're here? You paid us $500,000 to find out if you're alive or dead. Now finish him.
On August 25th, Mel Gibson had an okay but mostly forgotten drama, The Man Without a Face. I saw it back then, and I remember thinking it was okay, but I haven't revisited it in the 30 years since. And we'll close out the summer with August 27th's Needful Things, an okay Stephen King adaptation. There's at least 30 films based on his books better than this one, but this is certainly one of them.
Because I try to do a lot for this town. I accomplish a lot for this town. In fact, I am this town, and I am sick and tired of this goddamn persecution.
Wrapping it up, I'd say the summer only had one outright classic for the ages in Jurassic Park. But it's got quite a few films that come right up to the line without crossing it. The Fugitive may be coming the closest. But also The Firm and Sleepless in Seattle are very close. The Piano, Searching for Bobby Fischer, and The Secret Garden are all extremely well-made and well-reviewed dramas. There are some fun action films in Cliffhanger, Last Action Hero, and Hard Target, and a couple of fun comedies that I'd recommend in Dave, So I Married an Axe Murderer, Son-in-Law, and My Boyfriend's Back. And imagine this, it was a summer not dominated by sequels or remakes. In fact, the few sequels there were mostly bombed, with Hot Shots Part 2 being the only one that made any real money. And talking box office, obviously Jurassic Park once again dominated, making almost $360 million just in the US, and over $1 billion worldwide. The Fugitive came in second that summer at $180 million, followed by The Firm, Sleepless in Seattle, and In the Line of Fire. The rest of 1993 had a couple more of my all-time favorite films, with True Romance, Dazed and Confused, and Tombstone. Sly Stallone was back in the sci-fi guilty pleasure, Demolition Man.
Spartan? John Spartan? Oh, they let anybody into this century. What the hell are you doing here?
Robin Williams was hilarious as Mrs. Doubtfire. We had another big legal thriller in The Pelican Brief. Tom Hanks won an Oscar for Philadelphia. And the year was topped off by Spielberg's second masterpiece, Schindler's List. 1993 was truly his year. All in all, a very memorable year of films.
Wait, where are you going?
I'll be back. Ha! You did not gonna say that, did you?
That's what you always say.
I do?
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.